Hi, I'm Angela Renda. I'm Stephanie Renda's mom. My daughter is 19 years old and she was diagnosed at 1.5 years with a severe to profound hearing loss. She's been wearing a cochlear implant since the age of 4, and I've had the pleasure of sharing her experience of living through being implanted and going through school and growing up as a little girl with 2 older brothers to present day flourishing at Ryerson University in her 2nd year. When Stephanie was a year old, we were prepping, or just before she turned a year old, we were prepping for her 1st year birthday. And the big thing in our house is, how old are you going to be? And I was expecting my daughter Stephanie to say 1, and we would be clapping and celebrating. Her brothers had done this. She's got an older brother, Daniel, who's 2.5 years older than her, and Michael, who is 8 years older than her. So I expected certain vocabulary transitions coming out of her. So I wanted her to speak a few words, and I noticed that it was a little bit delayed. So the big trigger was when she turned 1, and I expected her to have a handful of words in her vocabulary, which she didn't express. So that was when I started questioning it. But it did take about 6 months after that for me to realize that there's something there. Her doctor was in denial. I brought it to the attention of her family doctor, and she actually discounted my concerns, just simply saying that my daughter is, our 3rd child, and as a result, she's lazy and doesn't need to speak because we do all the speaking for her. I questioned myself. I went home. I just revisited all the thoughts and concerns that I had, but deep down in my soul, I knew that there was something wrong. I was hoping it was a matter of fluid in the ear and perhaps just a speech delay for some reason or another. Never once did I think that, she really had a severe to profound hearing loss to that extent. Basically, I requested my daughter, I had to advocate and push for Stephanie to have a hearing test. I simply pleaded with the family doctor saying, look, I'm not an overprotective mom. I just want to know whether her hearing is okay, and I need to figure out if it's fine, then maybe it's just a speech delay and I need to work with getting that going. At this point, like I said, she was 1.5 years. She denied me getting a hearing loss for her, saying that it would be a waste of time. I then proceeded to go to my personal family doctor and insisted that Stephanie should get a hearing test done. She was walking around in his office. He called her once. Her back was turned, and he realized she wasn't turning and wasn't responding, and right away said to me, Angela, no problem. We'll give you a referral. They faxed it down to Sick Kids. I had called Sick Kids, and I basically asked, what do you need for, to take a look at my daughter? We're concerned, and is it true that you only accept children with severe hearing losses? Because that's what our pediatrician had made us believe. And they said, absolutely not. If you have any concerns whatsoever, whether it's severe or not, that your daughter has somewhat of a hearing loss, to bring her down. So they were wonderful enough to open the doors, and they basically called me as soon as the faxed referral went to them, and they said as soon as there's a cancellation, because of course there was a bit of a wait list, they would give me a call, and I obliged, saying that I'd make myself available. And not within the week, a space opened up. We went down. They did basic audiology testing, and they determined at that point in time that she did have a severe hearing loss. I was in shock. I was in denial. I couldn't believe what I had heard. I truly felt at that time that it was simply, like I said, fluid in the ears. Perhaps just the minor, insertion of tubes would allow her to hear better. But that particular day was quite scary for us. My husband had accompanied us because I didn't know what to expect at this point. But once we went home, it was quite devastating. And it just catapulted into grieving, being afraid, not knowing the outcome, the thoughts of not knowing whether my daughter would ever be able to hear or speak. All those emotions came out and really took a toll on the whole family. Right at the end of the testing, right away Sick Kids basically confirmed that she does need hearing aids. They were amazing in the sense that they have it down to a fine art. So her diagnosis was severe to profound in one ear, moderate to profound in another. They recommended the hearing aids. They were ready within a week. So that was the option that we were taking. They gave us literature on auditory verbal therapy, sign language. So they certainly gave us the literature and exposed us to the available resources that were out there. We basically went home. At that time, because of the shock, I didn't understand and I didn't know what course we were going to take, but it didn't take very long. That evening was one of those evenings where you just bury yourself into research, and it was almost like a 24-hour research event for our family. And my husband and I decided that if we're going to do anything, it's going to be auditory verbal. And we didn't look back. Okay, so Stephanie wore hearing aids from a year and a half old to 4 years old. And the reason for that, she was implanted when she was 4 years old. There was a delay of about 2.5 years. And the reason for that is back in the late 90s, Sick Kids was only implanting around 25 children a year. And of course there was a wait list, and they were basically going through certain criterias and were choosing children with a greater hearing loss than my daughter. Stephanie was flourishing with the combination of hearing aids and the intensive auditory verbal therapy. At the time we were going to visit with, we were visiting with Warren Estabrooks in his Learn to Listen program at North York General. And it was quite an intensive program, and she loved every visit. She worked diligently every day. I, of course, took a parental leave from my full-time career as a chartered accountant. And I chose to do this in order to be home with Stephanie and to basically join her and teach her how to listen with hearing aids, as well as the Cochlear implant afterwards. So she learned to listen and speak. So basically we just revolved and made our life around learning to listen and speak, and ensuring that Stephanie had every opportunity to succeed despite the disability. So she was doing quite well. Sick Kids was not ready to implant Stephanie. She was on the implant list from the date she was not quite diagnosed, because between diagnosis and the date she was put on the implant list, she had to undergo a CAT scan to determine if there was a certain reason behind her hearing loss. We knew that Stephanie was diagnosed with Mondini syndrome, and we knew that her hearing as a result of this syndrome is fluctuating. So it wasn't a constant hearing loss. It would fluctuate to sometimes moderate to profound, and then go down to severe to profound, and back up and back down. And as a result, the hearing aids were not sufficient. They weren't providing a consistent sound. We also knew that her hearing loss would drop to profound deafness by the age of 8 or 10, and that's usually what happens in cases with Mondini syndrome. So at this point, originally upon diagnosis, we thought that the hearing aids were the solution and that the hearing aids were going to carry her through. Then once the CAT scan determined it was Mondini syndrome, we then had to face reality and know that she was going to completely lose her hearing to the point where the hearing aids would no longer be sufficient to help her. And that's when our decision to go and do a cochlear implanting was made evident to us. Dr. Papson at Sick Kids highly recommended it, and we had to think about it. But one thing he did say is that he wasn't quite ready to implant Stephanie while the hearing aids were still working. So we really didn't have to make a decision. We felt that the decision was made. We had no alternative. Our daughter would eventually have complete profound deafness, and as a result, we knew that the cochlear implant was the way to go. I think we were blessed to be surrounded with other parents, family members, professionals who embraced our decision, and I would have to say we never really had a bad experience where anyone mocked us for choosing, the cochlear implant for our daughter or having the surgery. Perhaps it's because we just never came across that individual who shunned, surgery or the non-acceptance of going the auditory verbal route. We never had that situation. The only situation that I felt we were negatively treated was the first diagnosis from our original pediatrician, who denied us the opportunity to have Stephanie looked at sooner. And that's really the only bad situation that we encountered. There was never any negativity in terms of backlash from others who said that we should not have performed the surgery for our daughter. The decision to implant was a no-brainer. We knew we were going to go forward with it, and we knew it was the best decision for our daughter in order for her to have as normal of an upbringing, childhood, teenhood, and adulthood. And just looking into the future, we knew that this was the way to go. However, we were afraid. We were afraid of the surgery. We were concerned. We did as much research as we possibly could online, talking to numerous professionals. We actually spoke to other parents of children who had cochlear implants, and we attended many of the voice meetings, and just connected with this amazing community of parents and tots, and we went on numerous picnics with families with children who had cochlear implants. And so we, at this point, were ready. However, still afraid. So the day she went into surgery was one of those days where my heart was just in my throat. Every moment of the day was quite stressful, and we just were quite numb and just prayed as much as we could that everything would be just fine for our little Stephanie. When she got turned on, when the cochlear implant got turned on, it was such a joyous moment. I called her name, so I think the first word that she heard was Stephanie. Before that, I think she thought it was Stephanie. So she actually heard, you know, the proper phonetic sounds of Stephanie. And you just saw this huge smile on her face. It was amazing. Everything from, you know, the door, the chair moving, they were like, you would just see her face and the expressions. She was trying to figure out, what is that sound? And it was just all about, what is that sound? In some cases, she was very quiet. And in other cases, she was asking questions like, what is that sound? And we would have to repeat it, or, you know, move the same object twice just for her to hear it. The biggest thing I think that I was taken aback was the car ride home from Sick Kids. She was in the back seat and I was sitting beside her, and it was raining that day. And the wipers were going and the rain was hitting the window. And so we were stopped at a stoplight, and you just hear rain. And she says, what is that sound, Mom? And I said, that's just the rain, honey. And she said, I didn't know that rain made a noise. And that, I think, was the moment where the tears just were uncontrollable for me. And just so grateful for technology and doctors and professionals that are specializing in this field. I'm sorry. That made me realize that there's so much more that she just didn't hear. When you're deaf, you know, I understand that you think you can hear, you think you're fine and you can get away with just a hearing aid. But really, you don't know what you're missing. You don't know until you have better technology and better hearing devices, and you just yearn for more. And I realized at that time that even though she was a happy-go-lucky little girl and she was eager to learn and eager to play, and I was just really, I think assured that we had made the right choice, and that she's going to open up her life even more so as the years went on. I mean, she was only 4, so you can just imagine what she would have missed if we did not do this surgery, and if she did not continue with the auditory verbal therapy. So Stephanie is now 19 years old. She's gone through trials and tribulations. She is where she is today because of her determination, her stamina, her perseverance, her love of life. And she basically had a normal childhood, which is, you know, what we wanted for our daughter. She went to elementary school with her peers, her brothers, and she was in the local homeschool. So she didn't really do anything different than her brothers did. Played soccer, got her black belt in karate, did dance. Basically had a normal childhood. She's now in Ryerson. She's in 2nd year. My daughter has actually surpassed my expectations of her. She has just gone above and beyond. She graduated with honors in high school, and she's getting honor roll at Ryerson as well. So to me, her whole upbringing originally started off with she's got a disability, but between age 4 and age 19, we don't think of a disability any longer. We accommodate where possible, of course, and where we have to, of course. We provide and look for the best technology out there for her so that she can thrive and succeed, and anything that would make her life easier, we obtain. But she did this all on her own, and really you need a lot of willpower and determination, and we're very, very proud of her. And he's been with Steph. Actually, he was one of the reasons, well, we got him for Stephanie.
Oh, that's so
We
cute.
got him for Stephanie.
Aww.
She was 6 years old.
Oh my goodness, that's adorable.
So he really helped, and the whole there was a purpose to everything. Like the purpose was for language, vocabulary, everything that could, build. We can build on that vocabulary, get her to speak, even though there was no one at home.
Awesome.
She'd talk to the dog, right?
That's so cute.